the obesity epidemic, for instance. 30 years ago, it wasn't so much of an epidemic, right?
No. I remember when I was a child, you hardly ever saw somebody who was obese. It was rare.
Could that be because now the use of glyphosate is so prevalent?
I absolutely think so. I think glyphosate is probably the biggest and by far the biggest contributor to the obesity epidemic and also diabetes. They go together. And if you watch around the world, when you see, as soon as a country starts adopting a Western diet and starts eating processed foods, they start gaining weight. And it's quite striking in Africa. I did actually study Africa, and South Africa and the African countries along the Mediterranean coast, they all have an obesity problem. And there's a huge gap between them and the rest of Africa, where their people are mostly skinny. You know, very, very big difference in the average the body mass index of the population in countries where glyphosate is hardly used at all, and they have, you know, small farms and they eat mostly whole foods, versus South Africa has a pretty major presence with GMO maize, which is corn. They grow a lot of GMO crops, and they eat a lot of this glyphosate contaminated food in South Africa. The Mediterranean coast imports a lot of their food because it's all desert there, and they can't really grow enough food to feed the country. So they end up importing, you know, from Western countries, which are heavily using glyphosate in their, you know, industrial-based agricultural methods. It's really the industrial agriculture that I would put the finger on as the problem. And I believe we have to learn from Africa and go back in our country to small family farms. I think that's an important part of the answer, is to return to the small family farm that's organic.
Yeah, and so maybe that kind of explains too, like the idea of the French paradox, or, you know, like if you go somewhere like Thailand or Japan and they eat noodles and rice, and yes, I mean, they're skinny, right? But then here, you see people eating noodles and rice, and that's where a lot of the obesity comes from here.
Absolutely, and those are going to be contaminated with glyphosate, and the glyphosate is going to disrupt their metabolism, so they can't metabolize fats in their body, and also they have to store toxic chemicals in those fats, because glyphosate disrupts the enzymes that detoxify fat-soluble toxins. So we have a lot of other stuff besides glyphosate. And if our body can't get rid of it because they can't make it water soluble, the enzymes that would make it water soluble aren't working because they're being destroyed by glyphosate. So those other toxic chemicals end up getting stored in abdominal fat. It's a place to hide it away so that it won't affect the body. So if you try to lose weight, lots of times you'll get sick if you're carrying a lot of toxins in your fat.
So you're saying the other chemicals that you're exposed to because of glyphosate, actually, yes, they can't get out of your body because of glyphosate. Man, that is wicked.